Hey guys, so in this video we are going to talk about Elixir, so let's get into it. So the other day I had a question from a subscriber who asked me what my opinions were on Elixir as a language and as starting out as a new fresh developer. And from this person's perspective, Elixir seemed to have a lot of things going for it, but he was a little bit unsure because Elixir is a little bit of a functional language, and how does that actually, how does that work for you when you're a beginner? Because it seemed to this person, at least what I took away from the comment, that Elixir is more functional, and maybe it's easier for people who have a functional background to adopt Elixir. So I wanted to touch on this because to me the fundamental question here is, should I pick Elixir as a first language? And the short answer is no. Dear God, no. Don't pick it as your first language. Now listen to me. No. No, 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 no. Not the first language. I'll walk you through why. If you pick Elixir as your first language, you will miss the most important thing, at least from my perspective, that a junior developer can possibly have when they are just completely starting out. And that is that the syntax translates to something else. Now just hear me out here. One of the biggest reasons why I advocate that you learn as your first language something like JavaScript or Java or C# or something similar like that, Python or whatever, is because the syntax and the way of thinking when you solve problems in these languages are very similar. The constructs are virtually the same, the loops and all of this stuff. Even though it differs a little bit, it's not so different that you can't see the pattern in how things are solved. You can still see the red thread. That is not true for Elixir. It's the same problem. If you start fresh, you've never programmed in your entire life, and somebody tells you, hey, you should learn Haskell, run in the other direction, because they are lying to you, or they are among the worst teachers I've ever heard of, because Haskell is the same problem. F# is also the same problem. These are languages that are so vastly different from every other type of programming language that by learning that language, you will have a very hard time to translate the skills that you acquire in that language over to anything else. So here's my mindset when I pick this is the mindset I think a junior developer should have when they are picking their first language. Go with the boring, obvious choice first. Learn the traditional way of writing software, the fundamentals. Start with that and then transition into the fancy stuff. Because if you start with the fancy stuff from the get-go, you're just going to confuse yourself. You're not going to build a strong foundation. Let's take me, for example. Why do I love Elixir? I love Elixir. It's one of, if not my favorite programming language. It depends on what perspective you use, of course, but I really, really like Elixir. The reason why I like Elixir is because I know what problems I face in JavaScript and Java and other more traditional languages. I know the limitations. I know enough about just regular old programming to see that Elixir has a lot of potential. It's solving problems for me that I know I can't solve in a nice way in other languages. But if you are a beginner, you don't know this. You have no frame of reference. And what Elixir is going to do is that it's going to confuse the absolute living hell out of you, most likely. So don't feel like, don't take this as me saying that you shouldn't learn Elixir, because I'm not saying that you shouldn't learn Elixir. I'm saying that if you are a complete beginner, start with something else. And then when you feel comfortable in regular programming, go into Elixir. If you are a mid-level programmer like myself or a senior, good God, please try out Elixir. Help me push that language, because I want the job market to explode on Elixir so I can work full time with that language. I really do. It's actually one of the few languages out there where I would literally switch jobs, of course depending on circumstances, of course, but it's one of the few languages out there where I am so excited about it that I would like to just take a sabbatical, take a year or two and work for a company that uses it, just to feel it, just to know how it feels to work at scale with Elixir. Because my issue is, and I've argued this a long time, there's a big difference between learning a language, being able to build your own applications in it, and working at scale. And Elixir really, or the benefits or the promises that Elixir brings to the table only really shows themselves at scale. If you build a small little application of your own in Elixir, odds are that you will only scratch the surface of the power that language has. But once you're in that at that size that you need, that's when it's going to get interesting, because that's when all the problems that happen for most traditional application structures are going to manifest themselves, and Elixir is going to be able to deal with that in a very different way. And that's where I'm kind of curious. But if you're paying attention now, this should tell you what I was saying. All the benefits that I just listed happens in a context that is vastly different from that of a beginner. A beginner learning Elixir is going to learn a language that is going to have a lot. It's basically like putting, I don't know, putting something a truly powerful tool in the hands of a toddler. The toddler doesn't know what to do with it. You can maybe chew on it a little bit and put it in your mouth or whatever, but you have no idea how to leverage the power. It's the wrong tool in the wrong hands. So, Elixir is great. I absolutely love it. But as a beginner, avoid it. Learn something more traditional first, so that you learn real, regular programming. Because Elixir is, as I said, it's very different from traditional programming. There are common similarities here and there, but for the most part, it's not going to be the same. And yeah, that's basically it. When it comes to being a beginner, I think that the healthiest mindset that you can have is that you see yourself as someone who who has decided to get into shape. What is the most sure way for you to completely fail? The surest way to fail at getting into shape is to say, I'm gonna start working out 2 hours a day, 6 days a week. When you haven't, like, the most exercise you've had in the past month is that time you chased a balloon. That's going to be a really bad approach. The most consistent and best way for you to get into shape is to say, all right, I haven't worked out for a long time. Let's start with doing half an hour or an hour 3 times a week. And when you commit to just doing that, you start out light. You start out with the basic training regimen. Look at learning something like Java, JavaScript, C#, or any of these more traditional languages as that thing. It is something that lets you're just building a foundation, so that you can then, because a person who starts out with just doing three days a week will at some point get into shape, or get fitter, and be able to add more load and do even more stuff. It's the same thing. So start out with these more basic languages, and then when you feel that, hey, this is kind of boring now, I don't really like it, then go into Elixir. And when you do, get excited about it, just like I am, because it is a great language, but it's not a beginner language. Have a great day.